Welcome back to another episode of Enneagram Restored Podcast. I am your wonderful, beautiful Black host, Braylon Williams. For anybody who is new to this podcast, this is a podcast that I do where I just talk about the Enneagram and its benefits and how it can help us become better people. Um, and I always like to start off by just talking a little bit about what has happened in life recently for me. Um, Really, it's been kind of I like to think of it as a river, or if not a lake, that is just like flowing, but there's no extravagant force of current in this river or lake. And it's just, you see a little nice little breeze come, you see the tiny little waves of the river. That's just me right now, just kind of still, quiet, and just in the day to day of everything. Um, but I'm so excited about today's episode because it is a special episode. Not only is it the first episode of the new season, but it is also a different type of episode. Never done something like this before on this podcast. And it's a roundtable episode where I've got a couple people coming in and we're going to be discussing the Enneagram or talking a little bit more about that later. Um, and I just want to, before we go there, I want to talk briefly about the theme for this season. You may have seen it on social media already. I've kind of revealed it already. Trailer should have been out for season 4 by now. Hopefully, recording this pretty early. So, but the theme is waiting. And I like to talk about the theme every first episode because it just sets out the tone and it lets you know what the podcast is going to be about, keeps you expectant. And so, but before I really go into depth describing the theme of waiting, I want to take a look back at seasons 1 through 3. So the first season was a very, very informational season. I mean, almost a doldrum, honestly, about the amount of information that I've given the audience on the basics of the Enneagram. So if you're new to the Enneagram, I highly encourage you to go back to season 1. That is where I go through a lot of what is this type about? What is this type's core motivations and fears? That's where you're going to get the bulk of the information about each type in season 1. Um, Season 2, though, was all about reconnecting in relationships. And it's ironic, when I decided on this theme, I thought, how can we build from ourselves to others? How can we start inward in our reconnection and then make that work for our external relationships? Our friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, wives, husbands, all of that, colleagues, and all that. But as I prepared each episode and as the season just kept going on and on, it didn't take long to realize that first, reconnecting in relationships actually starts from the outside and it builds inward, because you have to focus in, you have to say, what is the big picture here? Where do I want my relationships to go? Then you have to kind of drill down to the center of you to say, how can I make that goal happen? So it was just very ironic. And I believe that if you listen to that season, that you really got a lot of great information out. I know I had a couple, had Krista Harding on that time. Uh, Talked about marriage. Had Meredith Boggs, a good friend of mine, on. So I'd encourage you to listen to that season as well as too. Um, and then last season, season 3, it was all about the 27 subtypes of the Enneagram. Each type has 3 subtypes: the social, sexual, and self-preds. And I just delved really deep into those for all 9 types, which equals 27 subtypes. And so, but I also took an in-depth view at the Hornevian group, or the stances, and the harmony and harmonic groups of the Enneagram. So it was a great time, a wonderful season, honestly. And I hope as we look back, if you've been a constant listener of this podcast, that you have gotten a lot from it. But all that brings us to here, to the now, to today, season 4. And this season's theme is waiting. Specifically, what it means to actively wait when I think about where this inspiration for this thing came from, it stems from two places, honestly. One, my personal life, for which for the past couple of years I've kind of had the standstill. Like I said before, it's kind of just been on this river. No drastic current is happening. Nothing life changing or exciting has really taken place. I just kind of been in a holding pattern per se. But when I say that I'm not alone in this is where the second half of that inspiration comes from. Back in September, during a life group session, um, a lot of the people who were there echoed this same sentiment, that they just kind of felt like they were in a holding pattern, like nothing new, nothing life changing is happening. And so I knew then that this next season, uh, which is now this season, of the podcast had to be about waiting, what it means to productively wait, what it means to actively wait, and how can we make the best of our waiting seasons. Now, one thing I want to say right off the bat is that, and this is something that I'll probably really reiterate multiple times throughout the season, but it is the fact that for some, you might experience a combination of a few things, or just one of these things. Waiting seasons are no respect of person. Um, the timing of it and how long it lasts is different for every person. For some, it might be a couple of weeks before your waiting season ends and you are launching into that next big thing. For some, it may be months to years before you launch into that next big thing. For some, it might be you've kind of had like moments of launches, but they aren't the full big thing that you're expecting. They're great things to happen, but they only lead up until that actual big thing that you're waiting for. And I know for me, it has been a combination of all of those where like you know, it's been weeks, something happens big, like great. It's been months, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then something big happens. Oh, great. I like it. But then also in the same sentiment, I've also experienced this kind of combination of these two where it's where I'm like, all right, here it is. Here it is, the final. Here's the thing I've been waiting for, the final thing. Oh, wait, no, that was just the lead up. So you could be, it's a spectrum really, like here, waiting to launch. Where are you? And it shifts dynamically. Sometimes drastically, sometimes not so drastically. It as it switches. So, but it's just this idea that we never know, and that I think that's why it's so important that this topic must be discussed, because we never know when it's going to end. We never know when it's going to start. But one thing we can be sure of is how to do it productively, how to wait actively, and so just briefly, what that means for me to wait actively and productively is to mentally prepare, um, prepare as far as goals, prepare as far as planning. What can I plan to make this launch happen well? Um, I could say for me, as I've started a new business within the last 2 years, one of the things that I've been really focusing on is how can I build the system of processes, um, so that when I finally do get a client for my design business, it's smooth and I'm not trying to work on this process from the ground up. I'm only refining the process while I'm working with this client, and they experience a smooth um, project timeline as well. So, but that's where we've been and where this podcast is heading. Um, but before I introduce our special guest today, I want to take a moment to just appeal to you and to ask you to follow Enneagram Restored Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Yes, we are on Facebook now. That is something that has happened within the past month or so. I finally said, you know what? We probably need a Facebook page so I can post a little bit more snippets of the podcast. So We're both now on Instagram and Facebook. The handle is the same, Enneagram Restored Podcast. And for those of you who might just be listening to the audio version of this episode, you can actually watch the recorded version of this episode on my YouTube page. And I'll put links to all of that in the show notes. And as well on that YouTube page, you can see the guest interviews from the last few seasons as well. So, but that's all going to be in the show notes for you to have easy access to. And I am just so excited for what is coming in this season, even though at this time, still kind of tweaking some things, still reaching out to guests to see if they can be a part of this season, and still trying to figure out how the guest timing and all that's going to line up. So a lot of exciting things happening, but I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. It's going to be a great time. All right. Well, it is a pleasure to be joined today by my good friend, Adam Kennedy. This
Hello.
was supposed to have more people, but I don't think they were able to make it at the last minute. But hey, where two or more are gathered, there am I, said somebody. First Chronicles of, I don't know, I never read my Bible. But anyway, um, Adam and I have been friends since what,
It was
2019,
like 2020, yeah,
2020?
because that's when I came to college and you were already there, and yeah, so it would have been the start of the school year in 2020. That was when
Yeah.
we met.
And he met a crazy black man. So, but it's been great. He has been recently a lifeline to me. He's got to see me on drugs for about half a day because I had a exam done that they had to put me on drugs for. And so he got to
That was
see
a
me.
great day from my point of view. Just yeah, I wish it
I,
was like a true serum kind of thing or whatever, but it was still good.
I still wonder what, like, even now, like, I try to piece together everything that happened after, and I can't, like, I literally don't remember putting my clothes back on. I'm like, did I dress myself or did somebody dress me?
Yeah, you were out of it, like completely gone. Like they asked you if you wanted something to drink, and like of course first you asked for like a Dr Pepper or something, but they
Did
didn't have.
I?
Well, yeah, I mean that's just what you do. That's your drink. But they ended up getting you a Sprite, and then you were just sitting there drinking it, and then 3 minutes later you look up and you go, "Did I order this? Where did this come from?" And it's
I
funny.
don't even remember any of that.
Yeah,
All I
it was-
remember is waking up, and then next thing I know, we're back in my apartment eating McDonald's, and that's pretty much all I remember clearly.
yeah.
And that was like 3 weeks ago now, and so like still trying to piece that together. But um, yeah, he has been lucky to see me on the, which not many people do see me on the loopy side and the not presentable side. But anyway, Adam, tell the people something that interesting about you, or if you have something more that you want to say, I'm gonna give the floor to you.
Well, now I have to come up with something interesting. I mean, did you ever like in school they would give you like say your name and like a fun fact about you, and like
All
I
the
don't know,
time.
those would stress me out so much because I'd be like just panicking, barely listening to anyone else. Like, okay, I got to think of something that's like interesting and fun, and I think of something and I'm like, no, that's stupid, that's not interesting, and I think of something else and I'm like, no, that's too much, I can't. But anyway, so yeah. Um, Everyone. I'm Adam. Let's see. I am 22 years old. As Braylon said, we met in college. At the time, I was going in for psychology. Um, but now, like most recently, after college, I've just been praying and thinking a lot, and I'm actually pursuing um, to be a lead pastor. That's something I feel like the Lord has called me to for a while, since like middle school, in fact. Um, the psychology was a brief moment in college where I thought maybe I would like more money, but money's not everything. But so the interesting thing about that, Braylon, being familiar with the Assemblies of God and like the way it works, I just got like fully credentialed. So in the
Oh, I
eyes of
forgot about that.
God, yeah, I'm now technically I can be called Reverend Adam as it.
I'm not calling you that.
I think you could. Aside from that, I love to go hiking. The weather's been great, really warm outside, so that I could be outside. Love to take walks. Love to go hiking and camping. Um, and it's my goal one day to do one of those like backpacking trips, but like you don't bring a tent, you don't bring a hammock, you have to go and like build your own shelter along the way.
Mm,
That's one of my goals. What I would love to do. I don't know if it's going to happen, but
that is a crazy
and
goal.
yeah, it'd be fun. Other thing, I just got married almost 8 months ago to the day. I think on Wednesday is our 8 month anniversary. We would have pictures here and there, but decorating the apartment is a work in progress. So
Yeah, nobody told me that their wedding was outside, and I showed up wearing leather pants. Um, so yeah, by the time I left that wedding, I was drenched in sweat. Thanks for the heads up.
you're welcome. You were also like the only black person there.
Which is not a rarity in Springfield, so kind
Yeah,
of kind
but
of used to that.
well, you came up and you said like you need more black friends, and I was like, and then I looked around as the cha cha slide was playing, and I was like, ooh, yeah,
Mm.
this is rough.
So, but it's all right. Pretty much every wedding I've been to, I've been the only person of color. Even Austin's wedding, I think I was the only. No, he has a black family member, so
Yeah,
somewhere in there, but um, still pretty scarce. So,
yeah.
but anyway, let's just get right to the conversation. Like I said, I want to first set in motion to let the audience know that when it comes to this conversation, um, there are only a few parameters set. The first being that it's questions about the Enneagram, and that the second is that I will not be typing anyone. Other than that, the only parameters that I said was kind of come prepared so it can avoid dead air time. But I don't know any of his questions. So this is raw, real, in the moment deal, and we're going to see how this goes. So go ahead and shoot your first question, Adam, and we'll get this ball rolling. Rolling.
Okay, yeah. Well, so you kind of gave me a heads up on like the theme a little bit. Is that something that you're able to like say out loud to everyone, or that's going to be revealed later, or
Oh,
um,
yeah. I've already. This episode also reveals the theme for the season, which is waiting.
or that's
So,
okay. Gotcha. So I was wondering at first if maybe you could like maybe expound upon that a little bit more. Like, you were talking a little bit about waiting for events that are like life changing or even some like unexpected events. Like, what kind of got you thinking about this idea of waiting and in context with the Enneagram?
so it was kind of a two-parter. So my personally life for me, and I've kind of said this already at the get-go of this episode before it came out. I kind of recorded a little bit of this already, but life for me has kind of been just where I go to work, come home, and that's it. Not much excitement, not nothing much life changing is happening. It's just kind of mundane repeat of everything. But then also back in September during life group, a lot of other people at that time also felt like they were just kind of in this holding pattern of life, kind of waiting for something big to happen. But
Yeah.
other than that, life is just mundane, doing the same thing over now and then. Every now and then having something big in sight happen. So I wanted to explore how we could wait uh, for that next big thing, but not just wait, but do it actively and productively. And
Mm.
what I mean about actively and productively waiting is kind of setting ourselves up for success and ready for that big launch. In the context of just aerospace and um, NASA, because that's on my mind right now. I don't know why. Um, they say, all right, we're going to land on the moon, but they had to plan, especially with the first landing, how to get there. So it's that kind of that idea. What are we planning to get ready for that big thing happening?
Yeah. definitely. And you're right with, NASA and those, like some of those big projects, they'll have a lofty goal, but you're right. It's so many days of just the mundane. Like I guarantee even the CEOs and the top like executives of whatever, if it is NASA or whatever, there are days where they're like, oh, I just don't want to go to work today.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through the same routine. So, it's funny that you're bringing up this like theme, and because I'm in a very like similar boat, and I'm excited for us to like talk about it a little bit. Um, because as I said, like I just recently got my credentials, so I can be a lead pastor, but that doesn't mean that immediately, I have a church and a congregation
Yeah.
and anything. So um, I kind of relate to you in that I'm also in a season of waiting. I know that one day there will be a church, and um, there will be a place where I can like really explore that gift. But for the next couple months and year, it's going to seem like a lot of mundane. And my current job is essentially being a janitor at a church, which is quite a mundane job every once in a while. So I kind of that leads me to what I was curious for you. For let me go into a little bit of what it's like for me with my experience and like waiting a little bit. I'm a type 3, which is, I'm sure you've discussed it, the achiever. We're all about goals,
Yeah.
ambitions, productivity. And I mean, that that's me. I graduated college in 3 years. I tried to um, be the discipleship, just I'll make goals and then achieve them as fast as possible. That's the way that I am. And so um, for me to see this goal so far in the future, pretty much every day I've been spending my time like reading a lot of books from other pastors and theologians trying to prepare for that season. I'm praying almost every day. It's not necessarily like, I can do a whole lot, but in preparation for that goal, I find myself like, okay, I have to read this book. Then I'm going to read this book. Then I'm going to um, talk to this person. Then I'm going to think about this ministry. It's very like, set something I want to think about, figure out a plan, and then move on to the next thing. So um, that's what my waiting has been like for this season. It's been a lot of, um, okay, I see that. Let's try to align everything in order. I was wondering for you, what has your experience waiting been like? And I don't know if you have like a set, this is where I'm going to end up, a pastor of a church, something, whatever, what's that waiting been like for you? I'm wondering if it's different between like an achiever versus, are you a challenger type 8? Is that right?
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that because in this waiting season, I've been kind of questioning, did I misidentify my type? And so I'm trying to, that's been what majority of my waiting season has been like, is trying to figure out, did I identify myself correctly? And
Mm,
so um, I don't want to get too much into it because I'm working on a blog post and all that. So I don't want to delve too secrets, give too
yeah.
much secrets away. But that's been the like the top thing right now. Internally, I'm thinking, all right, did I type myself right, or where did I jump to conclusions, or was there something that I didn't think about when I initially typed myself? But it's
Mhm.
also been kind of looking on the external of life, preparing myself for a successful season in business whenever that might happen, by networking, by um, getting contracts for my design business in order, and all that stuff, all the backline stuff. So it's been kind of just a preparation, planning, and goal setting, um, and learning that kids are wonderful, but from afar.
Yeah.
So, uh, Adam
Yeah.
knows this, but I don't think I've ever revealed this on the podcast. I am a substitute teacher, and so um, it wasn't what I had planned for this moment in life, but it has been both a bountiful place to rest, but also the most heartache I've ever experienced in my life because these kids really do be trying me sometimes. But we go in the grace of God, and I show him love, and I haven't killed one yet, so we're on the right side of heaven. Um,
That's always a good
but
thing.
yeah, it's just that focus of internally, who evaluating myself, am I thinking of myself in the correct way, and then also externally preparing business wise for a successful season.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I think it's really great to have that time of self reflection in the places you didn't expect to end up. And what I mean by that is like, you certainly didn't expect to be a substitute teacher, like you said, but this gives you such an opportunity to learn more about yourself. And I think that's something that everyone can kind of experience because just about
Definitely.
everyone will like find themselves in a place like, how did I get here? Like, I ran cross country in high school. Why? Running's tiring. I don't know. But at that season, I, learned about perseverance and what that meant to me. And, you know, so I think that's really great that, you know, you're able to reflect. Do you think that correlates with, waiting, like you're talking about waiting for that thing, whether you know what that next life thing is or whether you don't, you know, do you think that it's those seasons that naturally draw us to be more self-reflective? Like, I'm not where I thought I would be. Why is that? Like, what would you think about that?
I would say yes, definitely. That if you're in a season where you aren't when you thought you would ever be in life, that is not coincidental, but it's done on purpose. Um, wherever you believe in, for us, we believe in God, done by God's hand. But if you're a listener that doesn't believe in God, whatever higher power, I believe, has designed that for a purpose for you to once again reflect in on yourself and to say, why am I here? It could be in two reasons. I would say it could be a why did I do something wrong that I need to correct my course for where I want to go, or is my course of life just changing completely? Um,
Mm,
I can say for me, at once I wanted to be a pastor. Or I say, won't Lucy? I thought I was called to be a pastor, uh, but I think my context of what a pastor meant was very limited
mhm,
for what it could be. And now I'm seeing that maybe the term pastor is not what we hold it up to be, and it actually can encompass a variety of different opportunities.
mhm.
This, for instance, helping people heal through the Enneagram is kind of like a pastoral thing. Because if you think about it, the word pastor and what we think about it is just a leadership title and leading people into finding this place of redemption and healing. And so, just seeing a different view of everything that I've thought from 1999 till now up until and saying, oh, maybe that terminology exists, but you don't have to think of it in that way. Um, so on the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I'm a ENTP, also known as a visionary, and it's very true. I envision stuff a lot, and this is just one of the things I'm like, maybe my ministry isn't ministry, if that makes sense. Maybe
Yeah.
I create something completely different from what I would have thought of growing up and saying, hey, call to ministry, but maybe not that ministry. And so
Yeah,
it's just
I
the
love
idea.
that. I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I certainly don't want to get too off topic from like the Enneagram and what we're talking about, but you're right. It is so interesting. I think especially in, um, like Western, like American culture, we hear pastor and there's a distinct, like someone is in the pulpit on a Sunday morning and that's the
Yeah.
only scope of our vision. But truthfully, that's not what it is. Like that's pastoral ministry in a church context, but there are some people that are pastors in their circles, in their neighborhood, in their communities, that would never even want to work in like a church. And that's like what I've been thinking about as I prepare to be a pastor in a church. A lot of like elderly people that are like retired and those are some of the most pastoral people that I've ever met. And they might have only had like jobs as like, whatever, like farmers or, office workers, but just, they're some of the most pastoral people that I've met because they take that time to care for the people that God has placed around them and to, you know, to point people to Jesus and to the Lord. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think that's really interesting to talk about. I know that I'm trying not to go too far on the ministry thing because boy, can I, like rant and get on all that. But I'm really glad that you brought that up. I do want to go back to something earlier that you were kind of talking about, just with, well, I guess, yeah. So you were talking about waiting a little bit, and kind of because you're in like this season of waiting, and we've discussed like we're both in kind of that season.
Yeah.
But I have a question. I'm wondering if there's a distinction between waiting and patience, and how that would correspond with the Enneagram. And what I mean by that is, I'll use myself as an example again. Um, like, again, I'm a type 3, very goal oriented. I want results and I want them now. I'm not always the most patient person. Um, but I think that that's different than waiting for something. I don't know. I feel like there's a distinction there. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that subject.
I would say that patience is a virtue that simplifies or symbolizes waiting. I wouldn't say they are different, but also wouldn't say they are exactly the same. I think you gain patience from learning how to wait. And
Mm.
so patience is what you would exemplify like outwardly to those around you, but internally you would quantify that as waiting, if that makes sense. It's like they work hand in hand, but they still are yet somewhat different from each other.
Yeah. And I feel like patience or waiting can teach you patience, but when you're first starting to wait for something, you can be very impatient in that waiting. I mean, I even think of like kids that are in line for a roller coaster and they're just complaining to the parents like, "Ah, I don't want to be here, this is taking too long." But then as they grow older and they've had more, you know, like long lines that they've had to wait in, then they're able to just not complain as much because they're used to it a little
Well,
bit.
I would say any kid who is waiting in line for a roller coaster needs to be mentally evaluated because why would anybody want to get on one of those things? I don't know.
You don't like
But
roller
I
coasters?
do not like
What?
roller coasters. Went to Silver Dollar City one time for the band Evangel. We did a Christmas parade, but we went for
Mhm.
the entire day because they allowed us to do everything for free besides food. The food was like the only part I actually liked. Up until that day, I had never been on a actual roller coaster in my life.
Mhm.
Um, and the first one that we went on was Time Traveler. Uh, and
Love
I
that
just
one.
tell you that there was a moment where I literally saw my soul at the top of me and my body was there dangling. I was like, oh crap, I'm dead. So, yeah, me and roller coasters are not friends.
Man, I love roller coasters. I used to be so terrified of them though. Like when I was a little kid, um, my mom took me on this one roller coaster, Powder Keg. It was also at Silver Dollar City.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in my defense, before I say this, because it sounds really bad, I was really, really young, but I was so nervous that I was just like biting my mother's like arm because I don't know, it was like something to get my mind off of the roller coaster, and I felt so bad like by the time we got off of it. Yeah, I used to be so scared of those things. Now I love roller coasters. I'll jump in, except the
Mm.
busy ones, the spinny ones. I can't do that. I get really bad motion sickness. But,
I'll do the kitty ones, but like the ones you
yeah,
sit county fairs and that only go up like 2 feet off the ground, I'm good.
but those are good for like like kids though. Like if you're a parent, just throw your kid on a roller coaster. They'll get tired, and then that their energy's worn out. They're spent for the day. I'm sure.
It's true. Um, but yeah, what were you saying? I kind of took
No,
us
no, no.
on a rabbit trail there. Um,
That's okay. Yeah. So yeah, we were just talking about patience and waiting and how they're maybe similar, and maybe like waiting, like being forced to wait can either, well, it can test your patience, but it might not be like different. And so, do you think there are more types, like type 1, type 2, type 3, that would be more naturally patient than others?
Oh yeah. So when you have the stances, I want to make sure I get these in the right groups because I always end up getting them wrong. Threes, eights, and sevens are the assertive types, and they, of course, are pretty much the ones known to actually go out and start without much thinking. That thing that they have in their minds. Get for threes is that goal. For eights, it's like that thing that they want to do in the moment, and sevens is that next new exciting, exhilarating, adrenaline rushing thing.
Mhm.
Um, then we have the withdrawn types. I want to say uh, fives, sixes. I'm pretty sure I'm getting these numbers wrong, uh, so I won't try the numbers. But let me actually pull it up because I have a little cheat sheet. Because
Nice.
my memory is horrible. Um, so I made a little cheat sheet. And here's a little plug. You can also get this cheat sheet on my merch store if you want it. It's a PDF download, $5 for anybody listening. Just put that out there.
There you go. Nice plug. Yeah.
Withdrawn
Yeah.
group is 4, 5, and 9s.
Fourth,
And they would be the more kind of like intently patient, waiting people are trying to build the life that they want. And then the last group is the compliant group, and that's types ones, twos, and sixes. And I would say that their patience, their waiting would be less intentional on their behalf, but more about the forces that put it onto them because those types are like the compliant. So whatever that guiding force, it could be, this is a little example, it could be different, it could be much bigger than this. But for a type two, it could be their significant other that kind of is their guiding force. And so if their guiding force is in a waiting season, they'll kind of just comply with that, um, to help things be smooth. And so it's really not really like a forceful act upon, but the compliant group is led in their patience and waiting by who they are with in that moment, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, I'm kind of putting the pieces together in my mind, trying not to stereotype too much, but from what I know about the Enneagram, like, you were saying like twos and nines are the ones that are more, compliant and led with patience. My friends that are nines, like, they're the peacemakers. I think harmonizers is one of their
Yeah,
like
peacemakers,
names.
harmonizers.
And it would make so much sense that they're um, more apt to be patient because they're more of like, okay, let's see where everyone is, let's try to get everyone closer together and on the same page, rather than you know a 3 or an 8 or someone that's just, I'm going to be me and I'm loud and proud about it. The 9 would be like,
Yeah,
let's find peace. And same with 2, like, and that's, my wing. I'm a 3 wing too, and I know that that side, like, especially when I want to be helpful, I'm typically not the person to speak up first. I'm more patient to hear where everyone else is coming from, so then I can know how to best help in that situation. So that makes sense that that would be, kind of the like compliant versus the assertive. What you said, I was a little surprised when you said that a type 1 is more compliant and not assertive, and maybe because I just don't know too much, but I know that ones are more the perfectionist. And my mother is a 1. Her house is the way her house is, and her way is correct. um,
well, ones
yeah.
are also rule followers, so they're going to follow every rule to a T. So if the speed limit is 55, they're going to go 55 exactly, or and not even, honestly, they can be okay with going under 55, but even then, going 54. is probably going to ache at their nerves a little bit because they're not right there. And so
Mm,
ones are also known as role followers. They are the ones that, every teacher would love to have in a classroom, honestly, because
yeah.
they're going to do as we say. But um, kids are not made like that. Humans are not made all the same. We are not the Simpsons, so that is a good thing. But yeah,
So I bet that ones being rule followers, like you're saying, would be more willing to, I'm thinking, you know, if if they have a goal, this is the career that I want. I want to be a journalist. I want to be you know, I imagine that they would be more in the boat of, okay, I'm going to trust the system, trust the process, follow the rules of, just business and how it works. I have to go to school first, then I have to go get a master's degree, then I have to get an internship, then I have to get this. I'll follow that system where I feel
oh,
like,
definitely.
um, and that's just a generalization, of course, every individual is different. But then you have someone like me, and, this is one of the things that's a difficulty in this season of waiting for me, because I've had a couple of people say or suggest, hey, why don't you start out as a youth pastor or as an associate pastor and then go to a lead pastor? I know logically that that is a great idea to get experience. And if I were to mess up as a youth pastor versus, a lead pastor, the consequences and results of that would be a little bit less. But I really don't want to wait. I don't want to wait that step. I just want to say, no, my goal is to be the lead pastor. Why would I let any quote unquote unnecessary steps get in the way
Yeah.
of that? Yeah.
Um, I was going to say something, but I can't not fully think of what it is. So if I think of it, I will come back to it. But um, yeah, you got anything else? Well, I think
But yeah. So I've been talking a lot about myself and my experience. Um, what has your experience in this waiting season been like? And I'm curious because you said, you know, like in my mind, I kind of know where I'm going, or at least where I want to go, but you don't exactly have an idea. Um, and it seems like, you know, you might be like the challenger, but you might have mistyped yourself. So, what has that been like for you this season of waiting as whatever type you would think you're closest to?
so. It all kind of compounds back to itself, and as I'm trying to figure out if I misidentify it myself as well, it's and not knowing the end goal right now is that it's like maybe I don't know the end goal because I misidentified where I currently am. Um, Suzanne Stabile, the Enneagram Journey says, um, I should know this quote because I just typed it up this morning. Um, and the sentiment is that it is dangerous not to, when you misidentify, it is dangerous because in that moment, if you don't know you're tight, you really can't start that reparation, that repairing role. Because what the Enneagram is, it isn't a personality test that says, hey, this is you, you're done for life. The good, the bad, you have to accept it as it is. Here is your box, you got to live in it. The Enneagram is saying, hey, this is you. How can you expand upon this, make the good better, make the bad good, and so forth and so forth. Um, and so it's that idea, don't know where you are. So how can you make the good better and the bad good if you don't know your starting point? And
Right, because
so,
then you don't know what is the good and what is the bad.
yeah.
It's okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
So it's that idea, um, but it's also the idea of I'm what what I came to college in 2018. The vision and the idea of what I would be at the end of my time at Evangel was nowhere near anything. Even the timeline leading up to graduation, nothing aligned how I would imagine it to be
Yeah.
when I came to college. Um, Most of it turned out to be better than I imagined, but then some of it was, maybe what I thought there's a better way. So here I am uh, in this moment trying. I thought I would be working in a church full time at this point back in 2018, but now I'm like, I love the idea of owning my own business, be able to set my own schedule, but my business is not yet profitable where I can do that full time, 100% by myself. So here I am, sideline, built my business, but meantime, working, substitute teaching from now until I find something else that's more stable and reliable, until I get to that point where, hey, my business is all that I'm attuned to and how that affects the world. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's that. Where are you? Where are you going? It's it's a stirring pot, and if you have a lot of different ingredients in there, it's it's at that point where you don't know what it's going to make in the end, but you know it's going to
Yeah.
make something tasty and delightful. Hopefully,
Mhm.
if you're not somebody off TikTok who can't cook, but
um, so then, how important do you think it is? You're talking about the importance of knowing your type so that you can understand like both the good and the bad, just in general, and then you can heal from there. From my like psychology background, I saw how the Enneagram is helpful for, you know, okay, my coping mechanisms would probably be, just task oriented and get it done. And that's partially, identified by this Enneagram. Um, I'm forgetting how to word like partially by the Enneagram helping me see that I'm more naturally inclined to jump to goals and tasks. It's a good tool for healing, like you
yeah,
were saying. How important do you think it is to know your type and just in general who you are before you start on that next goal or project? And I know we've been talking a lot about careers, but um, just with like future goals, ambitions, projects in general, you want to get married. That's your goal. You're in a relationship. How important is it to know, you know, you before you start that, or with career, like you have this goal again, whether it's pastor, journalist, scientist. How important is it even important to kind of have an understanding of who you are, or can you substitute that by something that someone like me would be tempted to do, just barrel into it head first and figure out who I am along the way? But how important is it to take that step of, okay, this is who I am, these are my tendencies, you know, that preparation. Does that make sense?
yeah. I would say it's important because if you know your type, let me just say for a since we talked about type ones already a little bit, stick with those for a type one, and let's talk career wise.
Yeah.
They are going to be somebody who is going to have a career where they have a lot of people above them. They're not typically the people you see in the higher management roles because they don't feel comfortable leading because they don't make the rules. They just like to follow the rules. And so a type one person is probably going to want to and most often will stick with a career path that is lower management where they have at least 2 to 3 supervisors above them,
Mm.
telling them what to do and how to do things. Whereas um, type three, they're going to be somebody who is going to be like, all right, I know what I want. I'm going to go for it. And most likely, I would say threes, eights, and sevens are going to be, again, the assertive group. They really correlate a lot together. Are going to be the type of people who really try to make their own way in their career field. Um, and how that applies to them. They're less going to be about how can they work for somebody else, but how can they make somebody else work for them so that they can enjoy the life they want. For eights, that's independence. For threes, that's success, and for sevens, that's just adventure and thrills. Uh, but if we go now from career talk to relationship talk, I
Yeah.
want to take a look at. type twos for this matter because they're the perfect example for relationship talk in this manner. Twos are known as the helpers, and they're one of the things that they do is they often help people even though people don't need help, and that's their
Mm.
downfall. Um, One of the biggest things that Suzanne Stabile, who, if I'm getting it right, is a two, said she had to learn is what's hers to do and what's not hers to do. Um, Now, while that applies a great amount to twos, that saying can be applied to all nine types. Just to say that right there. Um, but relationship wise, twos are going to be attracted to somebody that they see needs their help. A partner who doesn't seem all put together, kind of, and or they're going to want to try to help that person as much as they see fit, not really as much as that person that they are going after sees fit, but as the two sees, oh, I can help you in this way and that way. Nines in relationship, they're going to go for the easy relationships that where it doesn't upset their rhythm of peace, their rhythm of harmony. That river is just going to keep flowing, and the current is not going to go here and slow or fast. And so nines are going to be attracted to people where there's peace, to relationships where there's peace, also careers where it's not that much upsetness in it.
Right.
So, um, yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's really good. And I think in the context of relationships, it's so important to really think about this and prepare for this. You know, like when my wife and I did premarital counseling, like a lot of it was, kind of personality tests a little bit. Not only knowing who you are, but knowing who your partner, your spouse, your significant other is, and just knowing kind of how they're wired, how you're wired, so you're able to handle, or maybe not handle, but understand, you know, why is Adam fixing the car whenever all of life is crashing around him? Well, it's because he finds the task oriented things to do whenever there's a moment of
Yeah.
stress. And so yeah, I think that's really good um, to bring up and to mention that it is important
So
in that season of waiting. Yeah.
I thought about this quote by Lisa Fisher. She says, "If I don't know who I am, I can't form a bond. And if I can't form a bond, I can't know that I am loved." So it all boils back down to that point of, do I know I'm loved? And in reality, we are a creature that was made for connection, made for relationships. And so, but if we don't know who we are, we can't connect with others and know that we are loved. And so, um, back in season 2 of this podcast, the theme was reconnection in relationships. And when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about how we could say, all right, who am I? Uh, who am I? But like, how do I want to reconnect with myself so that it helps me reconnect with others? But I found out, and as I was going through that, that the best way to figure out myself was to say, all right, here's what I want, umbrella wise for my relationships, and then bring it back down, funnel it back down to me. Um, because if we do it that way, then we know I'm not trying to project. I'm not trying to go with someone else's thing. I know this is what I want. And if I bring back everything that I learned, you can't convince me that what's inside of me is not what's inside of me and not something that I just am doing externally to um, make it seem like my goal is not my goal or my goal is my goal, vice versa. So um,
Yeah.
it's that idea of knowing oneself that really just encapsulates everything for the human lifeline.
Yeah. Another point I want to touch on as well. I was thinking about this as you're talking, you know, because we're talking about this season of waiting and what that's like. And you had mentioned, we're all wired for connection, for love, for relationships. I think waiting, just in general, has a way of making you or me or humans just feel alone. I think that, we even go back to, we were talking about a kid that's waiting in line for a roller coaster. They feel like they're the only person that's struggling to wait in line for that roller coaster, or bring it back to kind of the waiting that you and I are going through. you know um, I'll look around and see people that have already found, at least in my perception, they've found that goal, they've already reached that point. I'm the only one that's still waiting. And I know that, um, like, when Suzanne and I were engaged, the rest of our friends were married. And so it was like we're in this season of waiting and we can't enjoy it. So, how do you think, um, what would you say to anyone who might be waiting and feel some of that loneliness? I guess, first of all, would you agree with that? Do you think that that's something that's a common experience? And if it is, what would you say to that person or those people that are feeling that, perhaps loneliness while they're waiting?
I know it's a common experience, not only because I've experienced it myself, but the research also shows that it is a common experience. Um, this actually steps away from just the Enneagram right here, and this point steps into emotions. And so when we see other people uh, advancing in life for some of the similar goals and things that we want, we get we feel envy, we get jealous of relationships, but then it speaks back to us and it starts to be like shame. And shame's primary goal is to isolate us, to make us feel like we're the only one going through this. Uh, the more darkness, the more like loneliness you experience, the bigger shame grows. Because if you think about um, in um, Brene Brown, who is a great person, does a lot of research on shame, uh, has a book called Atlas of the Heart, which is basically defining different emotions. Um, and in there, when she talks about shame, she has this picture of a petri dish that has little black stuff in it representing shame. But then you can see on the outside darkness, and in the dark picture, you see the petri dish has more shame in it. Whereas if there's light, shame gets smaller and smaller. And so the more we feel alone, the more we say, oh, there's got to be something wrong with me. The reason why I'm not achieving what these people are achieving, shame is speaking to us. I must be broken. Shame is speaking to me. Uh, I, I must be invaluable. Shame is speaking to me. And so the more we see ourselves as lonely, the more shame we feel. Um, and so then shame grows and it grows. And then we are sitting in this moment of depression and not doing anything that we could possibly be doing to get ourselves ready for that next season in life. Uh, Not productively, not actively waiting. We just become monuments in a moment of life, moving, not moving, but honestly being rocks in a desert. Um, and so, but if we say, all right, my experience is different from the experience of other people. They might be ahead of life. They might have that woman, that man, that job that I want. But hey, maybe that job, that person wasn't it for me. Maybe that type of thing wasn't it for me, and there's something greater meant for me. I just gotta wait a little bit longer.
Mhm.
The more we can counteract shame, the more we will be at peace with our waiting, and we can actively and productively wait more. I will say it's not easy, especially for the heart triad because their core emotion is shame, and the heart triad is fours, threes, and twos. Uh, and so when they feel shame, it doesn't, it just sends them more into a downward spiral of things. Um, and so if we
I'm glad that
counteract,
you I'm
go
glad that
ahead.
you brought that up, because I was wondering that, do certain types spiral into those feelings of shame and depression a bit more often. Again, you mentioned type 3, and I would speak truth to that. It's a lot easier for me to see someone, and the only difference might be like age. Someone's 30 versus I'm only 22 years old. But if I see them already where I want to be, it's so easy to get down to myself on, oh man, I should be there already. They're doing this thing that I want to do. And, you know, um, so you said it was twos, threes, and fours that just in general maybe might go to that place of shame a little bit more quickly than other types.
Yeah, and the reason why is because their core emotion is shame. Eights, nines, and ones are the anger core emotion. Five, sixes, and sevens are fear. And so all those emotions work its way to shame. It's just that if you're already starting out at shame,
Mhm.
you are pretty much going deeper and darker. Whereas eights, nines, and ones, they start off at anger and then it works its way to shame. Sevens, fives, and sixes start off at fear. The more fearful they seem, the more shame that they end up feeling in the end. And so it's again knowing where to start from. If I know, oh, here I am in shame as a three or as a um, two or as a four, here I am in shame already. How can I begin to counteract that when I see a friend who is making more money than me um, at this point in life? Um,
Yeah. I think having to go through patience and waiting and going through those situations are so important for us as human beings because, like you're saying, it helps us not only coach ourselves in the future whenever we have to wait again, but it also can help us coach other people. As again, you know, again, we were talking about threes a little bit, and um, I've reached a point just in my journey and growing and understanding who I am and in waiting that, I can tell the moment of, okay, I'm starting to get really down on myself. And I kind of know how to talk myself back into reality and gain some perspective on it. And I think that's important for us to be able to help other people that are younger and um, or maybe just not have as much experience and they haven't realized how to go on that journey for themselves. Like, that's where it's helpful to know both yourself and if it is, a spouse or a significant other, and how they get into that shame or feeling, whatever it might be, you're able to be there to help someone. I think, like we are saying, waiting and using waiting as a time to reflect on yourself is so crucial and good for the overall human experience. I think it's something that is essential.
yeah, and this is where a good point of knowing a type's stress and security points really comes into play. And so on the Enneagram, I don't know if you probably know this, but it's a 9 point diagram, and every number has two arrows. One arrow that points towards the number, and one that points away from the number. So what those arrows represent is the one that points to is you go to that number in stress, and the one that points away, you go to that number in security, and you start to exhibit the more healthy. I said that backwards. The one that points inward is where you draw for in success and security times. The one that points away is where you go for stress. And so for threes, since you are a 3, they go to 9 in stress and they start to exhibit more of this withdrawn, how can I keep peace quality about themselves? I don't want to upset the dynamic right now. I just want there to be peace. Um, whereas at insecurity, they go to 6 and they're like, what can I do to um, help the greater good, keep safety at hand? Um, and then let's just say for 8s, because as of now, that's why I say that I am until I finally confirm otherwise. 8s in stress go to 5. They become more withdrawn as well. It's funny seeing the assertive types become withdrawn in stress. If
Mhm.
that, you know, how can you, at one point be here forcing yourself on the world, but in stress
Yeah.
you are pulled back. Ironic, but it works.
Mhm.
Um, but insecurity eights draw energy from the positive high side of 2s, and they start to become more giving, more magnanimous, and like helpers as 2s are in their most healthy state. And so, knowing that image of the diagram and knowing all here in stress, I begin to exhibit the lower sides, unhealthy side of type this, or here in security, I begin to experience the high, great qualities of this type. Knowing that also allows you to say, all right, I'm signaling to some point in moment. If I know this and I start to go this direction, and I start to feel secure for myself, I'm starting to feel different things. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling security, or stress comes on. Well, I know this is what happens when I draw energy from this stress number. What can I do to counteract that? For a 3 who goes to 9, um, oh, I'm in stress. How can I counteract this doldrum that I will start to get into this um, kind of lackluster and slothness, not to get anything accomplished because I'm in stress? What steps can I take to get back to the productive 3 that I am
Mhm.
for? And it's that same type of different lines of questioning, but same type of idea. What can I do to counteract going fully into the stress number
Yeah.
um, for any type?
So where I think one of the spots we've landed is it's really important when you're waiting, again, whether it's waiting for, you know, marriage or a relationship or a career, but regardless, when you're in that period where you're waiting, it's important to take that time to be very self reflective. Take those moments and figure out, okay, who am I? How will I react when this thing does happen, whether you know what's coming or not? Um, so we have the self reflection. What else do you think um, is good for people to do when they're in those um, periods of waiting to help get through it? And maybe this is based on type. Maybe this is not. I have a couple of ideas if you want some time, or one idea at least if you want time to think. But just what else do you think is important to do in this period of waiting? And maybe you could speak to um, eights, since that's at this moment what you would say as. But what else do you think is important to do?
While waiting seasons are great points and great times to reflect inwardly, it's also a great moment to build habits externally, um, whether that's exercising, eating healthy, or reading books, because they say it takes 21 days to build a habit. But if you don't have that habit set in stone already, and then your waiting season is over and you're in this big moment of life where everything is going so fast, you won't be able to build that habit in at that point because you don't know how to institute it. For just for example, I used to every Tuesday and Thursday, sophomore, junior year of college, I would do yoga at night. well, life got busier and busier, and I just let that habit fall away. And now it's like, how can I put that back into my schedule that works in a way for me? So, and that builds that habit again. So, waiting is more than just internal; it's also external type of things.
Yeah.
It's all about setting yourself up for that moment. uh, I just want to go back to with that NASA aerospace example I did at the very beginning. Um, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Hidden Figures, uh, but it's about the first moon landing, and they had to calculate this thing called the go no go point, which basically says as he comes back into orbit in the Earth, where is this astronaut going to land so he doesn't blow up as he's entering the Earth atmosphere. Uh, and they thought they had it figured out prior to the launch, but I forget what happened exactly. But they had to rework the numbers as he is ejecting from space and coming to Earth before he enters the Earth atmosphere and blows up. They had to calculate a new go no go point of entry. That is a stressful point. Um, if you watch the movie Hidden Figures, you will see just the like stress and the tension it is to try to figure something like that out in the moment as it happens. Of course, that wasn't their intent. They thought they had it figured out, but things changed as it went. But what would you do if you had a tool that could, even in that moment, help you loosen the tension
Mm.
of that? We have the Enneagram. We have so many different resources that, just for that example, this was 1960s, 1970s when the first moon landing happened. They didn't have much resources on figuring out that go no go point without doing the math physically by hand. And so, but this is 2024, and we have so much more resources. So why would, when I say resources, I'm saying, why would you take advantage of all the resources, the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, uh, uh, coaches, counseling, therapy, all these resources to lessen the point of stress, the point of tension? Should you be in a moment where you thought everything was figured out, but now you've had to, on the fly, recalculate everything? Um, Waiting
Yeah.
periods are great times to say, here's my plan of action, here's my game plan. Should I come to that point where I've got to figure things out on the fly again, because even though it seemed like a flawless, seamless plan, it ended up not being so flawless. And now here we are figuring out the numbers again as this thing happens. You have so many resources that you can just set in stone before you get to that point, to where when you get to that point, you know you don't have to fret about it, because even if you do get a lot of stress from that, you know, oh, I already have a counselor I can go talk to about this when it's over, to help me get my mind off of it. Or I already have this exercise, this meditation method, that when I encounter moments of unintentional stress or moments of unforeseen circumstances, I can go here and just get my mind off of it.
I love
It's
that.
figuring out everything you could do ahead of time. So you aren't like, trying to think of an analogy.
It's easier to, jump back into that when everything goes off the rails. Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely understand. I have a real practical example of this that has been suggested to me that I think is good for, honestly, everyone. Um, One of my supervisors at work suggested that I get in the practice of having a Sabbath day and sticking to that, which anyone who's not a Christian might not know. A Sabbath is like, traditionally a full day, argue 24 hours, 12, whatever. But the point is, you set aside one day out of the week, and that's, you do absolutely, like, you don't work, you do anything that, um, if, for Christianity, it's like you do anything that would be worshiping the Lord, honoring to the Lord, brings you joy, and also like brings you rest. So, just taking that time to set aside from work, that is an intentional habit that you have to set. And I have not been the best at setting aside that day to do that. But I know that if I set aside that habit now, when there's not as much going on, when I'm a pastor and I get calls randomly that I need to go to the hospital and visit someone, or it will be a lot easier to know how to jump into a Sabbath if it ever gets crazy to a point. So I love that you brought up physical, like external, what's the word you used, habits, reading, exercising, meditation, those things that can help you, um, in the seasons when you're not waiting and everything's moving a million miles an hour. I think another thing, um, that would be good in to grasp onto in those seasons of waiting is community, your friends and family, those people that are around you. Because we've talked about how if you're not careful, you can spiral into, shame, isolation, and even depression. Um, but when you kind of go into community, well, then one, you have a lot of accountability and people that are surrounding you. And it ties back to what we were talking about earlier with love and connection, which is something that every single person desires and wants. Um, but then, too, with what we're talking about, you're waiting for something, whether you know what it is or you don't. Um, you have people that are able to speak into what you're waiting for and give you advice and perceptions that you would have never thought of before. I have, I certainly don't know everything about what it is to be a pastor, and I'll think about it through the perception of a three a lot. It's very easy for me to think like, okay, build a church, do this, do that. But there are some people that would say, no, you're going to wait on the. There are just other perspectives that can help you in that career or that relationship, whatever the thing you're waiting on is. And so, all that to say, I think community and just surrounding yourself with people is an important thing to try to do in those seasons where you have to wait.
Oh yes, both a Sabbath and community. Um, I will say that I am not the best at the community part, for reasons that I like not to talk about.
Dude, I
um,
got married and I'm good. I don't need to meet any new people. I'm
uh,
fine.
but I can say I want to go back to the Sabbath thing a little bit. I started doing a Sabbath day about, I'm gonna say it was 3 years ago when I started doing it. Um, but it was never truly a Sabbath day because I would say, all right, from the time I wake up until uh, 9 o'clock at night or till after dinner, that's when I do nothing other than what's necessary. At that time, I was still at Evangel, so that basically just meant I would do nothing other than just going to classes and doing stuff then during that hour and a half that class was, or however long that class was. Um, that was my Sabbath. But then after dinner, that's when, any personal pursuits, any entrepreneurial pursuits I had that I would start working on.
Mm.
That's not a full 24 hours of Sabbath. Was not very beneficial from doing that. Um, but that's just the way I've done it, and I was happy with it because it gave me the best of both worlds of having that day of rest, but also not feeling like I wasted the day. But 2 Christmases ago, we went to visit family in Texas, um, and anytime I go on a trip, I always take my laptop, all my devices, because most of my entrepreneur pursuits are done from my laptop, like this podcast recording, writing scripts, and all that. I take devices so I can work on stuff. Well, it was unintentional, but it just kind of happened where like I never got my I think I got my laptop out once, and that was it. But even then, I never worked on something. I just got on Facebook and I went looking at clothes online.
Mhm.
But after that week was over, I was like, wow, I didn't work on a single thing. I feel so refreshed.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right. And now I'm in this, I want to say, conundrum where I'm either not working hard enough when I have days of rest, or when I'm like, I go too far and I rest too much and I should have been working on stuff.
Mhm.
Like, because I found out it's so beneficial when I just turn everything off, don't even open up my laptop.
Yeah.
It rarely happens. It usually happens on Saturdays because on Thursdays and Fridays, not only do I do teaching, but I also do an after school program. And so Fridays, I'm like, I am done. I can't tell you the amount of Fridays I've come home and my laptop has not gotten out of my backpack until Monday morning. Like,
Yeah.
all right, just stay away. I don't. I just want to sleep and everything. But yeah, it's so beneficial to do that Sabbath and to see that rest actually refreshes you. Um, and as in a surf type, that's not something we think of very much.
No.
The surf types are like, why wait? Why rest when I know I can make this thing happen? Um, Certain types don't really lean on anybody else or expect anybody else to help them make things happen. They are like, I have the power, I have the knowledge, I have the capability to get it done. I'm going to get it done. That's
Mhm.
why they are the assertive types.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just that, though, as an assertive type myself, that I know for sure that I am within the assertive framework, whichever type that is. Um, I'm like, of course, I can get it done myself, but there is just so much peace and also magnanimity when I just kind of rest and allow some things to happen naturally.
Mhm.
Um, and
Yeah.
um, there have been some things that happened this past, I would say December, past fall. I'll just say that happened. I didn't seek out these things to happen at all. I never expect them to happen. Um, they're uh, ever in my life just because of my track record in this certain area of life. And it was like some of the most like eye-opening situations in a good way that happened. So um, I don't want to go on public record of what they are because that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But um, it wasn't like embarrassing, bad embarrassing. It's just
No. Yeah.
type of I don't want to talk about it embarrassing.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, just knowing that, and then when it comes to community, I will say that there are certain types that shy away from
Yeah.
community, and knowing how your type reacts to community helps you build into community.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. Because there are some types I find typically the assertive types, and this is a huge stereotype and generalization, but from what I've observed, more assertive types are naturally more extroverted. And so, the way that my community cup is filled, so to speak, is I just go and hang out with some people. It doesn't really matter who they are, just as
yeah,
long as there are other people. Groups are awesome and great. But then I know that there are other types, like type six, typically, like the loyalist. They have their people and they are fiercely loyal to those people. And those are the people that will fill that community cup. And sometimes, like, stepping out of those people that they have decided to be loyal to, is actually like more challenging and a little bit harder. It can be. Um, so yeah, I would agree with you.
yeah,
It's important to know how you react to different types of you know two groups of two people, two community, so that you can learn how to get that essential part of human nature fulfilled without stressing yourself out
Yeah.
constantly.
It all comes back to that knowing who you are and where you are so you can make the good better and the bad good.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
the Enneagram it is it's in, the Enneagram has polygons within a circle. And I think that's so intentional because it all comes back 360, you know. You have these points of where like they go off and everything, but they all come back um, to each other. So
Yeah,
any other things you have that we haven't talked about already? I know we've talked about a lot.
we have. Yeah. Um, Honestly, no. I just, you know, I think it is important to do a little like kind of summary of, like waiting can be really hard, and I think it's supposed to be. But where I think we've landed is that um, if you're in a season of waiting, it's important to take that time to do some important self reflection to identify who you are, your stresses, your securities, in context of, the Enneagram is like one of the many helpful tools, which goes back to what you were saying, use all the tools necessary for that, self reflection, um, build external habits that are going to help you when you're not waiting and in the busyness of life. And, you know, cling on to like community as well. I think that's where we've kind of landed with it. Is that like accurate? Would you say?
Oh yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that is spot on. Honestly, well, more well said than I could have said it.
Well,
So,
I if I want to be a pastor, I have to know how to talk English sometimes.
well, before we close out the episode, I like to do a few fun questions, and I'm still working on other segments for this part, so I'm going to continue with an old segment, rapid fire
Ooh,
questions.
let's go.
So, the rapid fire. I'm not going to ask you. I have six total, but I'm only going to pick out a few. So, first, favorite book of all time.
Of all time, man, I've been reading
Yeah.
so many books lately. All time. Okay. Well, this is it's going to sound cliche, and by saying that, you probably know what I'm going to say. But being a Christian, and the Bible is my favorite book of all time. There's so many things. It has life. There are cool stories. So that genuinely is my favorite book. It's something I could pick up, read over and over and over again, and I would learn more about myself, the Lord, the universe, and never get tired
I should have guessed that.
of it.
All right, if you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself?
Oh my gosh, I would tell myself to chill out.
Uh,
I would, because when I was in high school, mentally I was already in college. I was just so I tell myself, calm down, go hang out with your friends, have fun. Just being a three. And just
yeah.
enjoy life, slow down a little bit. It's okay.
Um, I'm picking. I had different ones picked out. I'm looking through the list here. Um, let's do this one. One thing you hope to accomplish in the next 3 months.
Oh, see, this is where it's tricky, because I've said it so many times now. A pastor is my goal, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next 3 months, because I've been advised to wait until Suzanne and I have been married at least a year, which is a really great thing. So, what was the question? Something I want to accomplish or achieve in the
Yeah,
next 3 months?
yeah.
I just really want to savor this time before we jump into full time ministry. That will be a very fast paced kind of thing. So, I want to go on more walks in the park. I want to book a trip and go on that trip and really enjoy time with my close friends and family for these next 3 months.
I like that. Um, and then let's do a binge-worthy TV series.
A binge worthy TV series. Oh, man. Um, Man, there are so many different ones that I could say.
I'm gonna tell you, if your
Uh,
answer is not Ted Lasso, you're wrong.
do what?
If the answer is not Ted Lasso, you're wrong.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm about to start it. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my
No,
goodness.
but that's I was telling Suzanne yesterday. I was like, I really want to start Ted Lasso. I think it'd be funny.
You should.
Yeah, I will. Um, okay, this is one that you're probably not going to expect, Braylon, since you've seen me and know me a little bit through college. This is something that Suzanne had me watch. It's her favorite show, and by marriage, I like watched it. We just finished all 7 seasons like 2 days ago, and this is a Gilmore Girls. I know that that's maybe shocking or surprising, but it's fun to watch with someone who is really invested in it and they know everything, because the whole show is so frustrating, and just you're just frustrated at or at least that was my experience. I'm frustrated with everyone all the time, but then it also brings up like, you know oh wow, they didn't handle that relationship or interaction well, and maybe it's just fun to watch with a spouse, because it's like, what would we do if this were happening to us? So 10 out of 10, watch the Gilmore Girls. There it is on a recording, so now everyone can. Yeah.
Honestly, it's surprising that you just now watched that. Honestly, I would have pegged you as one of those people who watched Gilmore Girls a long time ago.
I don't know if that's
So,
a good thing or a bad thing, but no. And yeah, I even told Suzanne, I was like, nope, we can't do this until we get married. No reason why. I just didn't want to.
all right. Well, you don't have any more questions, but is there any just like last thing you just want to put out into the universe, the earth, before we close it out?
Yeah, so to anyone who's like a Christian and might be listening to this slash watching this, um, Jesus and God, like that's the most important thing that matters in life. And in those seasons of waiting where you might be, really take that time to pray and read the Bible. Yeah, because that's, like I have my goals, I have my dreams. Success is something that I'm, well, it, in the past passionate about, but you know, Jesus and that relationship with the Lord is the only thing that really matters in life. So, jump to that. If you're not a Christian, obviously I'm biased and I would say you should at least consider. But at the very least, like in these seasons of waiting, I would suggest just take some time to reflect, who you are, where you want to be, and then really take some time. I think Sabbath, whether you're a Christian or not, is something that you should definitely do, because at the very least, it's so extremely beneficial for your mental, emotional, and psychological health. It just is a great reset in this crazy 21st century world where you get everything. There's a book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry that kind of teaches you how to slow down. That's something that is, I would highly suggest, if you're going to put an external habit on yourself in the season of waiting, that's one that I would really consider doing. So that's it. Those are my final thoughts.
Well, I like it. And with that being said, that is all of this episode of Enneagram Restored Podcast. Again, I want to thank Adam for being on the podcast. I'm a great longtime friend. Um, Even though I'm honestly shocked that he just now watched Gilmore Girls. I've never watched it. I don't know if I ever will, but we'll just see how life happens.
Yeah.
But um, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to Enneagram Restored Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and yes, we're even on Facebook for the oldies out there. But also, if you love this podcast, be sure to give us a review on Apple Podcasts, because when you leave a great review, it tells Apple Podcasts, hey, this is a great podcast with great people on it. More people need to hear about it. But even if it's a bad review, I like to say leave it, because I might find your address and come and kill you. But no, I say leave it because it helps me become a better podcaster. So I like to take the good and the bad. They all matter to me. With that being said, until next time, I want you to remember that the Enneagram doesn't define you, but it does bring restoration. It helps reshape your thinking and habits.